It's really interesting. Uh, I'm beginning to, well, I have noticed that it is just as something that Elijah said in one of her videos, that the functions are activating before the conscious mind. And in the case of SE, I'm realizing that my consciousness is being curated because things that are not changing don't even enter into the mind uh unconsciously. Like they don't enter into the conscience in the first place unless I consciously try to pay attention to those things. So it's like, oh, I talked previously, like SI is changing, or no, SI is paying attention to things that aren't changing. SC is like only paying attention to things that are changing. So it's that desire for change to happen. It goes beyond just desiring or wanting change. It's like you can't even experience something if it's not changing. If there was no change, if there was nothing new, nothing different, it's like it didn't even happen. And that's why it's like such a waste of time to do anything uh the same. So that is crazy. Um but that is what's happening. It's like the need to exist is tied to change because things cannot be experienced unless they're different. It's like, oh, you hear something, okay, great, heard it again, bored because it was the same thing. I already knew that. So it's like so frustrating to hear people repeating themselves. It's annoying because I do it too, but it's like to try and take that in when it's the same is just annoying. It's like, yeah, get on with it. So that is a really interesting thing, and there must be some way that each function is in a similar way curating the conscious mind so that it's like gating what's actually going to get there, and I guess knowing what things you have to consciously look for are going to be um, how you're going to increase your perspective. So I'm going to try and do that, but because we're tracking change with SC, that we're only perceiving things that are changing. That's, I think, where all the just ignoring of things that aren't moving, hard time finding stuff, because it's unless it's moving, can't see it. And but it's also really interesting because uh, you have an acceptance of everything that isn't moving. You just you're just okay with all the things in the world, and this is, I think, perhaps why it's said that SC is an easy function to have, because if you don't care about what's not changing, things that can be considered like fundamental issues that are, uh, you know, like the real aha moments that are blowing people's minds, you've unconsciously already ignored all of it. So it's like, how are you going to have some deep realization about the world because you ignore those things, you ignore things that are just facts of reality that have no ability to change. So I think that's why it's really is living in the moment more than anything, because what's really going to be changing is the small things from day to day, and the overarching things that are happening in the world. It's boring because it doesn't even enter into the mind because it's the same. It hasn't changed. Maybe if there's another world war, or if apocalypse begins, they'll be like, ah, now that's interesting. But all the problems that we're dealing with, it's the same ones. So it just gets automatically tuned out by SE, unable to pay attention to these unchanging aspects. So it just accepts reality, and it doesn't care. It only cares about the things it can perceive in the moment, day to day. So that's just been my observations. I'm not even sure what to do with that yet, but just some things that I've been noticing.